When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
That's right, everybody. We are back. This is the HTML All Things Podcast. This episode is titled, maybe working title, but currently titled, Leveling Up Your Dev Skills When You're Not a Beginner, But Feel Like One. So in this episode, this is a kind of a scenario that I find myself in frequently, and I feel like a lot of self-taught or like maybe small business, maybe even startup developers feel like this is you learn on the job and you learn what's required because whatever it is required. So for us, run a small web dev agency, someone contacts me and says, okay, I need all this help with like RSS feeds. Well, I become an RSS specialist for that month. And then once that project's done, and maybe I never even see that person again, they pay their invoice, hooray. And then I move on and someone needs help with like their Facebook page. And it's not even really like, hardcore web development or maybe even any web development. It's just sort of like web presence. And so I'm helping somebody with their Facebook page and I become, all informed on like what we should do on their Facebook page for a month. And then the list goes on and on. Each month it changes, each couple of weeks, whatever. And so sometimes when I'm like, hey, if I'm reflecting back and I'm like, what are my dev skills like? And dev skills in this particular case, I suppose, can apply to like web development skills, not just coding, if that makes sense. So like stuff like helping people with SEO, things like that, more human things that are a part of the quote unquote development, but not the coding of a website. But it feels weird. And I'll do a deeper dive, obviously, in the episode. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. And just a reminder, you can get up to 20% off a Scrimba subscription. You can learn how to code with their interactive media player code editor. You can also learn back-end. You can learn front-end now. So it's really, really cool. Go check it out. Use our affiliate link to get that discount. Scrimba.com/links/HTML, all the things. All the actual details regarding the discount and such will be on our website on HTMLallthethings.com in the show notes. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of do a bit of a rundown more than I already have. And then Mike and I will kind of like start tearing this apart just because I want to kind of explain myself. So it's not just me who needs to upgrade. I'll start with me though. So like my knowledge base, and I've said this a million times on the show if you've listened to previous episodes, but I use a lot of no code, low code, and site building tools to deliver websites to small to medium businesses. Small to medium businesses train their staff to use popular tools such as WordPress. And so when they call us, they'll actually request things out like right away. And they'll actually say, hey, I want this done on WordPress. I want this done on this. I want this done on that. And basically it's like, okay, sometimes I can try to convince them otherwise, especially if what they're asking for is say like some old dated CMS or something like that. But oftentimes I can't make them budge at all. And so it's like, if they request WordPress, I'm working in WordPress. And this is generally because, future, website build outs for them, like if let's just say they're contacting me and this is their third website build out because they've, been in business for 20 years or something like that. They will want to keep their staff constantly trained in WordPress. So it's like, the older WordPress 2 websites ago, a little bit of a newer WordPress a website ago. Now, we don't want to have to retrain everybody up, and we don't want to have to train them how to keep like your content creation stuff going too. Because it sounds simple, but if sometimes a CMS will handle everything for you, especially if it's a custom one, it'll like crop the images and resize them and compress them and things like that. Whereas, WordPress will do that to an extent, but maybe not to the extent you'd normally realize. And so you're trying to keep your training down, but also your content creation costs down as well if you have some sort of active blog. And then outside of my circle, again, just to give some background, just a few weeks ago, I actually had a client reach out for recommendations on some WordPress training materials because they wanted to start editing their own content. And they stated that their only web development experience was back in 1995 when they got an HTML certification. And so this person, again, also is someone who, is upgrading their knowledge base. And so, of course, there's going to be countless cases like this where someone has a certain degree of development experience, and that degree of experience leaves them with a lot of blind spots. For example, I have barely used Node.js. I think I've used it like one time on something that's actually in production. I've kind of like played with it here and there, but for the most part, I haven't really touched it. And that's a huge blind spot in the modern web development sphere. So I have a problem and I have a question that I'll lay out, and
Yeah.
then we'll kind of like tackle this.
Before you jump into that, I do want to kind of reiterate this, because even as someone that's more involved with like code day to day, this is something that resonates with me, because I'm constantly, maybe it's imposter syndrome or maybe it's something else, I'm constantly aware of my blind spots rather than focusing on the things that I know. Like the blind spots outweigh the things that I know, and the more coding I do, the worse it gets almost, because I'm working deeply on this form, right? Like this HTML form with Svelte or something like that. And like I'm getting deeper into it, and then I'm like, oh shit, validation. And then like there's a black box for me. Like, I'm just sort of saying an example. And then all of a sudden I'm down the validation path, and then all of a sudden I realize, oh shit, like the security side of it. Like the black box compounds the deeper you go into something. At least for me, this might be different for other people. And on the one hand, like I kind of use it as a driving force to learn and go deeper into topics. And on the other hand, it's something that I constantly have to battle to not derail me. Because if I think about the things that I don't know, I immediately start to panic a little bit. I think that's normal for most people. And I start to doubt my abilities, etc. And that can lead to like just stagnation, can lead to me just burning out on a project or not finishing something because I don't know the future of the project or like the next step or something like that. And that it's a constant battle back and forth. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of reiterate that point more than anything, because I believe that I'm not the only one that feels that, regardless of where you're at in the tech stack, whether it be, no code tools or deeply code tools.
You know what's kind of weird about that, though, when you mention it, is that when I look at something for personal, I want to say personal gain, that's not correct, like a personal project or something that I'm just experimenting with, it's weird because I'm rarely afraid of whatever it is. So like I was doing an experiment, and it was just like purely experiment, no promise on the deck or anything like that for a client, and this particular project like needed Node.js, and I was like, okay, like I don't really know this, but I'm willing to kind of dive into this because there's no expectations and there's no promise, and I just was able to figure it out. It worked well. We ended up putting it into production, and it's been working for over a week, and that's it. Like that's it. What's weird, it's just a weird, I don't know if I'd call it like a human trait or something like that, but it's just strange that immediately when it's someone else that's like calling you and saying like, hey, we need help with this. Hey, I need help with that. It just doesn't happen. Like it just doesn't feel as doable, I guess you could say. Like it just feels like, oh my God, this can't happen. Like, I don't know how to do this. But given the challenge in real life, again, for myself, or when there's no real stakes, I just do it. It's a strange, like, human condition, or at least it is for me, that I don't fully understand. I'll lay out for this episode, though, I'll lay out like the problem and question, though, that I guess we'll generally tackle. So the problem is that coding guides and pathways, so for example, like courses that are like, this is the full stack path, this is the front end path, this is that, they're typically tailored toward absolute beginners or people looking to become self-taught. And the reason why that's a problem is because it fits a lot of the bill, but it doesn't fit the bill that we're talking about today. Like a lot of this stuff, I'm just going to be, sitting there, and they're going to be talking about like what VS Code is and what a database is and what HTML is. And I'm going to be like super, super bored for the majority of it. And it doesn't work for me. Obviously, when somebody makes education materials, it's meant for a particular audience. So I'm not blaming the person. But then someone else might come out and say, hey, you should learn piecemeal. And you should learn piecemeal. But the thing is I don't know what I don't know. So like, what is my piecemeal? Because I'm not in like a traditional environment where it's like, okay, guys, next month we're going to switch everything over to Svelte. So you better learn Svelte. And so obviously I need to learn Svelte if I don't know it. I'm again getting called by clients. They're asking me to do things. We go left, right, up, down, center, all over the place. And so that's the problem. And the question that I guess I want to answer today, or that we'll kind of tackle and discuss, is what should someone looking to upgrade their coding knowledge do when they're already a professional? Like, I am already a professional and I have these huge holes. That other person that called me is already a professional, but they have like huge holes. And so, and in their case, they're not a web developer, but like this, it's the same sort of principle. So what do you think, Mike? Like,
Yeah.
do you think like like, do you think that this is like a solved problem? Because I was thinking like maybe it is, but then I'm thinking to myself, well, no, because I've kind of tried to solve holes in my knowledge for years and haven't been able to do so like super effectively.
So this is a case of different mentality. So it's a solved problem from the sense that no one knows everything, and yet people continue to move on and up in the industry. And their mentality is, and I can say this like about myself for the most part, is that I know how to learn something and I know how to pick up something pretty quickly in this space. So the holes that I have, regardless of what is required, well, not regardless, but within reason of what is required, are quickly solved by something that I've done a million times, which is go in, learn a specific set of tech to fill the specific set of needs and move on with my life. Going out there and trying to fill those holes without a specific need is the thing that's difficult for a lot of people, because like the motivating factor a lot of times for me to learn something is I need to use this tomorrow, or I need to use this to solve this problem. And that's something that I do, I want to say, on a weekly basis. This is like, there's things that I build on a weekly basis that I've just never touched before. I know about them existing, but I've never touched them before. Now, they vary in complexity. A lot of them is just like, oh, I haven't touched this API. Oh, so I have to go and read this documentation and I have to test it out. Like those are like the more lower hanging fruit things. Like I know how to use an API. I just haven't used this specific one. So like, yeah, I have to.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense.
Exactly. But like sometimes, like also fairly frequently, it's like, hey, I've never done image compression, but tomorrow I have to do image compression. And that's a more complicated thing than an API. But for the most part, I'm not really scared of that path. When I'm presented with a thing that I need to solve, I'll just find the best tool for the job. I'll ask my friends, I'll ask the community, I'll be like, what do you guys do for this? And people will point me in the right direction. I'll ask my coworkers and they'll do the same thing. Hey, this is what I use, etc. I'll learn about it. And to learn about it, I usually do multiple things. I'll watch like a quick, rundown YouTube video on it sometimes just to get an idea, like a quick overview of what it is. I'll look at the documentation and then I'll just spin it up and start playing around with it. Like I'll set up the test environment as best I can so that I can actually like throw stuff at it, like throw data at it, throw an image at it to see if I can compress it better. Then I'll figure out some tooling to provide. And I like, if it's the image compression example, I'll see like the output of the image compression and see if it's smaller, see what the quality is like. So I'll just play around with it, right? And then I'll eventually get to a place where I'm more comfortable with understanding what I don't know. And that's when I'll dive deeper into it if I need to. But a lot of times the surface level is enough. If it's a quick image compression that needs to be done on a surface level, that could take me, a couple days, and I'll get the best, the 70% or 80% of the way there. And I don't need that last 20%, which requires the much farther, deeper dive into understanding exactly what different algorithms do for different images. Like if you have a certain type of image, like a portrait image, there's a certain algorithm that's better for portrait images versus if you have like a landscape of art, there's certain, you know what I mean? Like you can get really nitty gritty. Then there's there's general stuff that will work for everything. And most of the time, that is what I will tend to use until, again, the next part of it is like the product manager comes up and is like, hey, we need this to be slightly better, or we need this to go deeper, whatever, depending on the requirements. And then I'll go deeper. So I'm not too worried about things I can't do when it comes to people asking me to do something. I am still worried about things that I don't know, like the black boxes, like that you said. That happens to me like on a day-to-day basis where like I just think about something and I'm like, oh shit, I don't know that. Maybe I'll need that someday. But I usually don't go in the direction of like, okay, I'm just going to go and figure that out with no reason. Right?
Right. Okay.
Now, there's one other thing I want to say before I'll pass it back to you. If you're in a situation where you're like, I am thinking about I need to switch jobs, or I'm worried about my job security, you're a professional developer, you're in that situation, and you're like, I've only been doing COBOL for the last 10 years because that's my job. In that situation, I would just start looking, if you're worried about that black box, like everyone else is, like Matt's saying, what I would do is I would look at, okay, what's my goal? My goal is to maintain a job. Like I need to get a job. I would look at the most popular technologies in the area that I could get hired for, and I would go and learn them on the side. That's what I would do. If I was worried, if I was like seriously considering that, hey, my job security is not great, I don't think I can get another job in this space, because I've learned this super niche specific tech stack for only this company, because that's a common thing. Like COBOL is just a generic example, but there's some companies that are using like made up programming languages that only they will use, like only one company or two companies will use, and people will code in those languages for 15 years and become only proficient in those languages, and then they're left without a job, and then they're like, okay, what do I do now? Well, that's where you want to really start thinking about filling some black boxes and making sure that you're ready for that next step if it ever comes, right? I think that's the main example I could see for like going above and beyond.
Well, we see that with the gaming industry, right? Because it'll be something like Bethesda. Like if you're not aware of gaming, there's a company called Bethesda out there, and they have their own engine called Creation Engine. And yes, it's at 2.0 now or whatever. But the point of the matter is like their developers working on teams that are, going to be working on teams that are making games on Creation. I mean, Creation is only used by Bethesda. So if they get laid off, if they leave, if they go somewhere else, they don't know like another engine, like they don't know Unreal, they don't know other things. And so it's like very similar with web development stuff as well, because I mean, just today we were just asked to like port over like Webflow to WordPress. And it's like, things are not as simple as just like, hey man, like I'm just going to press port really quick. Like it's not converting an image from a JPEG to a WebP or from a JPEG to a PNG. It's like, this is a big thing that needs to be done. And I think that is where I hesitate a lot, actually, is with the big things and the black boxes. So, like for me personally, I find myself struggling with something like if like a client like comes to me and let's just say, for example, like they have like this comprehensive project that they want done, and it's sort of like, okay, so I can do it all in WordPress is a prime example. I can do it all in WordPress. I know the plugins to use. I know this and that, whatever. And then the client comes and asks for like a couple of like specific things that, let's say, like the plugins can't do and like the code thing can't do. It's like, well, now I have a problem because like I don't really code, or it's not actually, no, I don't. I just do not code WordPress plugins. It's not like I've done it all in the past and stuff like that. Like I've done it once, like just for fun for myself. But I like professionally speaking, I do not do that. So then it comes down to me like kind of getting worried because it's like, well, if I was better at doing all this stuff, I would be able to like make this solution for them. And so it's like, well, like maybe I'll learn all this stuff, but it's like, you can't just it's sometimes a big thing, like especially the big black boxes. It's sometimes a big thing where it's like, I don't know PHP very well. So it's like, I would need to learn PHP better. I would then need to like learn how to interface with WordPress. I would then need to figure out how to like ensure that it works on like future versions and updates of WordPress. And so it's like, look at all this, like that's a big black box. And it's like, if I knew all that, that would be fantastic, but I don't know all that. So it's like, well, what am I, it makes me get that imposter syndrome, but it also makes me think like, okay, what do I say to this person? Because it's like for you, Mike, it's like if you're doing like an image compression thing and you find, something, whether it be an NPM package, an easy way to code it, or, maybe a WordPress plugin, if you're working on WordPress that day, it's like, that's how I would handle it too, right? Where it's like, okay, like there's a general image compression plugin and that's easy enough to use and it's within the budget, maybe it's free, so let's fire it up. But then I think to myself, well, like I could have just coded all this up. And this is where I start kind of like getting stuck in my own head where I'm like there's no way for me to know everything, but I feel like I'm missing all these spots because most people don't need this. Like most people don't need like some X like random feature. So most people don't need this other random feature. Things like that. Like, so I'm not sure what you think about that or how you would handle that. Because like, to me, I just have to tell the client, like, like I can't do that or something like that. Like I try to be honest with the client as much as possible, but it's like, at the same time, it's like, I don't want to seem like a fool, so I'll just be like, well, like, I don't know how to do that, but I'm not going to say like, I don't know how to do that because I don't know how to code that or something. Like it starts getting my brain firing off and on all cylinders where I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, am I supposed to learn this whole freaking thing in order to like develop this thing for them that they may just toss away anyway? And it's like some small feature kind of thing. And like, yeah, I could leverage AI and like that would be an easier way to do it. But at the same time, it's like, I still don't know how, like all of the ins and outs. And I'm sure that I'm going to make some beginner mistakes working with WordPress. And then that problem, and this is the main issue, that problem won't come up again for 4 months or won't come up again for 4 years. So it's not like, obviously if every client is asking me for something, I'm like, okay, it's time to learn that. That's where my knowledge comes from now. starting getting asked over and over again for a bunch of knowledge. Like, okay, I need to learn this. That's why I learned SEO. It was like, okay, like back in the day, people didn't really care. Now they really care, at least in our client base. So therefore, I'm going to learn SEO and help them, and I've been successful at helping them. But like these little random things, it's like I know this is possible, but like I just personally can't do it, and that kills me, and it makes me worried about, am I leveled up enough in my coding knowledge? Am I leveled up enough in my web development knowledge? And it always feels like it's no.
So yeah, there's multiple things to unpack here. This mostly comes from a confidence problem rather than anything else. I think from the perspective of you actually having these situations happen, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, almost never has it really come up where you have had an ask that was demanded and without like reasonable demand that you had to say, no, I can't do this. Most of the time, and again, I'll let you correct me, what you have done from what I've seen is you've been like, oh, I haven't personally done that, but let me look into it. And that's the
Yeah.
response that you give 99% of the time to people that ask you about doing something custom that you haven't done before. And usually what that does is it lowers the stakes, which again, I think you mentioned earlier in the episode where like the lower the stakes, the easier it is for me to try it. Like with that Node.js example, like you didn't know you could do it. You said, I don't know, let me just try it. And that's realistically how most developers will approach that problem. Like they won't approach it
Right.
with confidence because again, like what you said, it's not going to be something you solve every month or every week. It might be something you solve once and never have to touch again. And being truthful, being like, hey, I'll look into it. I'll get back to you. In project management, those things are called spikes. And what they mean is that, hey, this time is dedicated for just researching it. There's no resolution that's going to come out of it. The only thing that's going to come out of it is more tasks or a feasibility report. Like, so an example that I have is like a customer can come to you and be like, hey, I need a store locator, right? It's fairly simple, straightforward, right? But then they could go further and be like, I need a store locator, but can you make it custom so that people know exactly how far it is to go from point A to point B to point C to point D? Because they need to go to like 5 different stores to complete whatever. Like maybe it's a complex logistics company, whatever it is. It could be something complicated. Well, the store locator is easy, but now they're asking you to solve essentially what is called an unsolvable problem, which is the traveling salesman issue, right? And customers don't know that. So they'll ask you to do sometimes impossible things. And so you go on your spike, you might not know it either. You go on your spike and be like, okay, part A is easy. You find that out. Store locator is easy. I can put, pins on a map. People can click on it and find a way to get there. Part B, here's how it would work. You would have to solve this mathematical equation for calculating the most efficient distance path from point A to point B to point C. And that will require a mathematician that doesn't exist yet. And if you solve it,
Okay.
you'll make $1 million because that's the reward for solving the traveling salesman problem, right? So like that's an extreme example, right? But when you go to them with a solution and being like, hey, this is the solvable part, and this part, maybe it's not unsolvable, but this part will take like a week because I know how to do it. I've done it before. This is what I would do. This part I haven't done yet, and I've realized that it's very complex. So it'll take me about 3 months and probably like $100,000. Is it worth it to do that? And you go to them and you ask them, and you'll be like, okay, this is how it is. 99.999% of the time, they're going to go for that first part, not going to go for that second part because it just doesn't make sense. And it's the same thing again inside an internal project at a company. Someone, a project manager, a customer, whatever, there will be a user requirement, and it's broken down into sprints and be like, okay, well, this is what's feasible for this sprint, and this is what isn't. And a lot of time, what isn't feasible for the sprints is not a lot of time, but sometimes that what's feasible for the sprint is stuff that the development team has core knowledge in, and the stuff that's not feasible is the stuff that they have to ramp up heavily in that needs extra time. And so, yeah, you just don't have the skills required to do it in a reasonable amount of time. And it just doesn't make sense from a cost perspective. Then you start bringing in, okay, this is a key feature to this product. You might need to bring in an outside consultant if you want to solve it. And that's going to cost extra money. But if it's a key feature, it shouldn't matter. So like there's always a solution or a path to a solution that will make yourself and the customer at least somewhat happy. And that's the approach you have to take to solving to unknowns, because unknowns are going to happen any project that you do, no matter how many times you do a WordPress site. There's going to be something in that site where someone's going to ask something that just has never been asked before, at least to you. And you're going to have to give them an answer like, it depends, or let me look into it, or whatever. And that's an expected thing. It's better than just saying no from the get-go, in my opinion, unless you know it's not something you can do, or not something that's possible. And it gives you the ability to have a lower stake in it, of being like, okay, no, I could definitely solve that impossible problem, and then coming back to them and being like, oh, it's impossible.
And you know what, like you're 100% right in the fact that that's how it's like happened all these years. Like, you know, we've been in business for a number of years. It's not like we've been in business for 2 months. Yeah. And like, that is absolutely how it is. It's weird how, like, at least for me, it's like when I get asked something like that, my immediate instinct is, it's not an actual panic, but that's the word I'm thinking of, is it's like, oh my God, this has been asked of me. What am I going to do now? And it's like in the meeting with the person, it's like, obviously you're cordial and you're just like, oh yeah, like I'll take a look. I'll see if it's possible. I'll see if I can do it. I'll see whatever. I'll see the feasibility. And then you're 100% right. It's a good observation that it lowers the stakes, right? Where it's like, it lowers the stakes and then it makes it more doable, realistically speaking. It makes it more doable. It makes it better. It makes it like just a more like chill, realistically. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to try this. Like, just like with that Node.js thing, I was like, I'm just going to try this. And like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I just kind of did it in my spare time. There was no deadline or whatever. And I just like figured it out. It makes me think, because like when you mentioned something at the beginning of the episode where you said, like, when you start to look at those like black boxes and those holes in your knowledge specifically, like that's when you start to panic. And I feel like that's what I'm doing when I'm asked something. Like, I'm immediately like, well, I can't do this because I don't know this, and I don't know this, and I don't know this, and I don't know this, when I really should be asking the question of like, okay, what would I do? Or like, how would I do it? Because there's an episode I think we have as well. And then like, I think we had an episode, because like obviously we talk off air, but like, where I mentioned that one of the better things about something like a ChatGPT is that I can ask those questions, where I can literally say to it, hey, like, this client is asking for this. These are the parameters. You know, it's in WordPress. We don't have any more money for plugins. We this and that, whatever. And like, what is it feasible? And it will usually ring out or like rhyme off like about 3 or 4 different solutions. And then you're like, okay, this one sounds dumb. That one sounds expensive. This one sounds okay. This one sounds perfect. So let's try with the perfect and then go with the okay if we need to. And like, that's kind of like, we have the tool for it now, but it's like, I haven't like programmed my brain quite yet to like figure out, or like to like accept that. It's a weird phenomenon. At least I think it's a weird phenomenon where like, for whatever reason, like my first thing is just like, that's it. I'm an imposter here. Like, it almost comes back really to imposter syndrome, which I kind of didn't think was going to come up today, although it seems foolish in hindsight. But this feels like this could be an imposter syndrome thing.
Absolutely. It's absolutely an imposter syndrome thing. Like I said, this is most of what you're talking about is imposter syndrome mindset, right? Like you're describing something where you're not sure if you're able to do it, even though our whole job is to solve problems that are like, there hardly is ever a template that will fit the problem. The only thing I do on a day-to-day basis is pretty much solve unknowns. That's the only constant I have in my work, is that I know every day I'm going to have to solve something I haven't solved before, usually. And like, you have to learn how to embrace it for the most part. Like, obviously you have for the most degree, because that's what you do. Even if you don't fully acknowledge it. Yeah. Like,
I guess like another thing is like you were saying, because like the episode is kind of like the question of like, you know, if someone's looking to upgrade their coding knowledge, like, what do they do? Like, do you agree, or do you think that it's like, it's purely like when you're asked, or like when you need to do something you learn? Or do you think that there is any point in which somebody should be like, I'm going to take a course? Because I would take a course in something if I was like, hey, you know what, like, everybody is asking me about affiliate marketing and I understand what it is, and we even do some ourselves, but I'm like not an expert. We got 4 people asking me. I'll literally tell them like, I'm going to take a course in this, and like that would be my course of action. But like, that's not fully self-motivated, if that makes sense. Like, because obviously, like you were saying, you could like kind of zoom out and look at those black boxes, but you're not going to tackle those black boxes unless you like absolutely need it. Because heck, maybe you'll never get recruited for RSS stuff. Like
Exactly.
maybe no one will ever ask you for RSS, and then now you just have like a 100-hour course on like RSS specialization under your belt where you're like, yay.
Yeah, like I think there's room for courses in this. Where I see it is, again, it is related to either what you're doing or what you want to do, right? So if you're in a position where you hate your job, you hate the tech stack that you're working with, you hate whatever, and you want to move to something else, then it probably makes sense to take a course in whatever else you want to move to. And if that's web development, a lot of times that'll be React. Like to take a course in React, right? Like that's going to give you the most chances, the biggest opportunity to find a job, because that's the number one framework and it's not going anywhere. And the other thing is, like, if you're working in React or like whatever, if you're working in a framework and you notice yourself not comprehending it on a day-to-day basis and you want to dive deeper, right? Like you notice gaps in your day-to-day work on a consistent basis, that's another indicator that maybe a course makes sense. Like if, you just see yourself benefiting from it for your current task or your current work, right? Like if you're just like, oh, I can do this on a surface level, but I need to do it every day and I need to get better at it, I need to get deeper, then finding a course that will get you further in might be a good place to start. And then actually like implementing those things and trying to break things, like it's just going out of your way to fill in black boxes for the sake of filling in black boxes is not worthwhile, because it's an infinite black box. Like there's just infinite amounts of things that you don't know. So there has to be a justification. There has to be a reason for it. Otherwise you're just wasting time.
And you know what? Like now that I think of it, if someone is like a total beginner, maybe even listening to this, whatever, and they haven't coded anything, they haven't like touched any website development, whether it be low code, no code, or whatever, there's a reason why when somebody says, I want to, try this web development thing, people say, well, just try a crash course in something. Look up an HTML crash course, or look up a CSS crash course, or look up a React crash course, or whatever, because it's just like, hey, go and see what it is that you're going to get yourself into. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you whatever? Oh, you like it? Okay, cool. Now maybe try to build yourself a website with it. And then as you do that, you might think, hey, I want to pull in my own podcast. How do I do that? That's RSS. Okay. And then now that person gets that RSS knowledge, rather than it being more, because when I was talking about that client who got, had his certification from 1995, I was thinking to myself, I was like, the thing is with him is I struggled to give him resources, because my resources, I know what I'm looking at. I know that, this YouTube channel is primarily about marketing, but they have 6 really good guides in Elementor that I really like. And that would be what I want him to zoom in on. And obviously I told him that, but if I just gave him access to the YouTube channel, he wouldn't be able to discern that. And so when I gave him access to the WordPress learning material, because I believe it is official WordPress learning like courses and stuff for free, it's like I gave him that page, but I kind of made sure to know that, or made sure to let him know that, hey, like this is very much like probably more advanced than what you need. And it's also going to be different, because I went into WordPress specifically for them, as I mentioned on prior episodes, and I like to make things fill in the blank for clients, where they literally show up, they fill in the name, they fill in the images, they fill in whatever, they press publish, and short of there being a content mistake, there's no mistake on the page. That's what I prefer to do. And so even though he's asking for WordPress assistance, what I assume he's actually asking for, and that's why I put the disclaimers in, what I assume he's actually asking for is he wants to edit his website. And he's unaware that WordPress is a really an open-ended platform where, like, I'm using a page builder, but like Mike, you may not have if you built it. And if we hired someone else, they may not have used a page builder at all. They may have used WordPress as a headless CMS. Like, who knows, right? So it's a way different. It's just way different. Like, it's a way different way to learn. It's a way different like pathway, because like someone like me, it's like, oh, like maybe I should learn how to do WordPress plugins. Whereas that guy, he has that same gap where he's like, man, I wish I could just do this and I can't find a plugin for it. But he's not a developer, so he's not going to be the person that goes and makes that plugin. Like, that's just not on the table for him. He just knows that that's a hole in his knowledge, and that's just a hole in his knowledge. Like, he's not going to become, because he's some other position at that company. He's just helping on the website occasionally.
Yeah, and I think that also opens up to a different perspective as well, where you're talking about like the client perspective. They need to know a certain aspect of the code base, or of the functionality, and it's tough to find material directly for them because usually a guide will be much more comprehensive, or it'll be much less comprehensive. Like there's hardly ever a time where you're going to find a video for the exact thing you need. What you'll need to do is you'll find something that encompasses the thing you need, and then you'll make your own decision on, like, finding the thing that you need in that, like, the needle in the haystack, essentially. And that's the reality of being a developer. Now, with AI, like you mentioned, that's become much, much easier and much, much better, because you can ask it exactly what you need, and it'll usually give you only what you need back, like the answer back, rather than give you like, hey, here's a link to docs, read this yourself, which is what a lot of the kind of guides would do. There's another aspect to that now too, where, like, I've been talking a little bit about, you have these black boxes, you shouldn't go out of your way to fill them, whatever. But a lot of developers, and I think this would encompass a lot of our audience, the developers really like to code and really like to learn new things. And what I don't want to be saying is, like, you shouldn't do that, because I do that all the freaking time. Like, I'll go out and learn Svelte for whatever reason. I'll go out and learn Vue, and I'll go out and learn different frameworks based on the knowledge that I have, so that I can see what's out there, because I like doing that, right? That's not really to fill a black box for me. I never had like that itch of like, oh, I don't know what this is, and that's why I'm going to do it. It's more to like look at, just to see what's out there, and to see the new tech, and see if there's better ways to do certain things that I've already been doing for the most part. Like, the reason I learned Vue for the first time, that was my first framework of choice, was because I was using jQuery, and I just wanted to do something a little bit more structured, right? Like, I wanted to do something better. And so, like, I learned Vue at the time, and it kind of clicked because I had this comparison of like the jQuery connection, like jQuery does it this way and then Vue does it this way. And I made those connections, and like I was able to do that. So that, in my opinion, like, I'm not saying don't do that just because it's, a black box that might not benefit you, because you can have fun with it, and it's something you do outside work hours, and you can build a little app. And like you said, that's maybe where you learn a little bit of the black boxes that you are curious about, that you might never use, like the RSS thing or whatever. And that's fine, as long as you're mostly enjoying it and it's not like being forced down your throat. Like, if you hate your life when you're doing that, then I would again focus on the things that matter to you as a developer at that point. But if it's something that you legitimately enjoy, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, sometimes I can't force myself to do these things, like, and that's fine. But sometimes I get this itch where I just want to try something, and then I'll go and try it just for shits and giggles. But that's the same thing as me saying, like, I'll go and play a game at night because I want to relax. Sometimes coding to me is relaxing. Not all the time, far from all the time, but sometimes it is. And that's where I take advantage of that time and learn something new just for the shits and giggles kind of thing.
Well, that highlights motivation from the other end. Like, we're talking a lot about professionally, we're being asked by our bosses to do something, or the project managers to do something, or in our case, the clients to do something. But there's, like, we're in the equation as well. Like, we may have a motivation where we're like legitimately interested in RSS. Like, I keep bringing that up just because it's an easy example at the forefront of my thought right now. But like, we are a part of our own decision making. So you're 100% correct. Like, we may think, oh, this new thing came out, that's kind of interesting, how would I do that? Oh, that's an interesting API. They didn't have an API before, and I used to have to scrape. Scraping still works, fantastic, but maybe I should try this API. And so that's a motivation from our side, where that API may never, API manipulation or API usage or whatever may never make it into production. We may scrape that site till our web app shuts down. But if I think it's cool, and I think it's worthwhile taking a look at, it's like, I'm in the equation as well. Like, the clients, the bosses, they're in the equation, and they're like an equivalent to me, really, in a way. Obviously, priorities, whatever, money and all the rest of it, but we're still there. And I do think that part is lost on a lot of people, where, like, I think I told you a few years ago, where I was just like, I'm kind of just interested. I think it was when you were learning Vue, and I was like, I'm just kind of interested in how React works. And this is like a number of years ago now. And you just said, well, just try it out. And I didn't try it. I ended up just watching like a guide, and they were talking about JSX and all the rest of the things, which was simple enough to read about and kind of figure out and be like, okay, like, I don't need that right now. And I kind of backed off. But it's like, that was still like a self-motivation. Like, I could have been doing anything else. I could have been, watching a movie or playing a game or walking around the neighborhood or something. But instead I was like, no, I'm going to to use this as my own personal motivation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, whenever you have that like need strike, you should take advantage of it. Like, whenever you have that like mindset of like, oh, you know what? I really kind of just want to learn something, just because you want to again. take advantage of it. Learn something cool. Learn something that's relatively adjacent to your stuff. Learn something completely different, like, start programming microcontrollers, whatever. It doesn't really matter at that point. Then you're outside of the scope of really this conversation. You're not really, your focus isn't to level up. Your focus is just to entertain yourself with the new stuff. And the side benefit is that you're leveling up, and that's cool.
Right.
Right. And that's the mindset that you have there, where like you're not, where it can become an issue is if you're like basing that decision on something that you're afraid of at work. So like, for instance, you have this motivation to build something and you're like, well, I have to do Stripe at work like next week, and I have never done Stripe, so maybe I should build something with Stripe. But I like in the back of your mind, you're kind of regretting, or like you're dreading Stripe, and then you're using this like time that you would have had fun in to do this really like meticulous development, and then you're just going to have a bad time there. You're going to be regretting that. You're going to hit Stripe anyway. You're going to have work time to do it. Just leave it to that time if you're actually like dreading it, right? Like, but if it's something you're excited about, yeah, do it. So that's my caution there. That's kind of where I'm at with the courses and guides. Like, I think that there's definitely a lot of use cases for them, but for the most part, you need to figure out what's the most important thing to you, where you can have entertainment, where you won't have entertainment. And I've said this many times on the podcast. The most important thing isn't like doing everything at once and being like the most effective and productive or whatever at that time. The most important thing is doing it to a point where you can do it tomorrow and the day after, and like you can be more consistent. And if that means that you do less during one day or do more during another day, and however your motivation, quote unquote, is that day, you got to follow your own rhythm to make sure that you can do it the next day and the next day and the next day, and not burn out on day 5. Because if you just like don't sleep for 4 days because you want to learn everything and everything's a black box to you, and then day 5 comes around and you're not even around to answer any questions at work, it's going to be detrimental to everyone. So you need to find that balance.
Yeah, and I think like just to kind of conclude the episode, I think like realistically speaking, like this, what we're kind of getting at is that, obviously leveling up makes a lot of sense. Leveling up feels good, and having black boxes and having, holes in your knowledge, blind spots in your knowledge isn't great. However, like there is your own personal aspect to it. There's a professional aspect to it. And really, when you level up, instead of forcing it, it's really more organic. Like it sounds like what we're kind of getting at is like maybe the healthiest type of leveling up is just more organic. Because the thing is like with me, it's like I always feel like I don't know how to develop websites. That's kind of the way I think of it. Like, I don't know how to develop websites. Like, I just kind of like use all these tools and blah, blah, blah. But then when I talk to a client every now and then, especially one that's not technically inclined, I'm like, yeah, we'll just use WordPress and this and that. And they'll be like, what's that? And I'm like, oh, like I do have knowledge. It's not natural that somebody goes, yeah, we need this hosting, we need that, we'll do this, we'll do a backup here, we'll check this, we'll go here. And it's like, oh, I actually do have knowledge. It's just like my knowledge base is easy. I have a lot of blind spots, but so does everyone else. So I think maybe that the takeaway from this episode is, try to organically level up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that's it. Mike, entertain the people, because I'm a fool and closed the Patreon document. I was like, man, conclusion of the episode, let me just close this.
Genius. I love it. I mean, I'm going to entertain the people by dancing on a voice only podcast. So if you're seeing this, which you aren't, I am actually like dancing right now. I'm entertaining you.
Tap shoes.
Yep. I'm tapping away, but my condenser is actually stopping, or whatever. My microphone wave stream, whatever, is stopping the tapping from coming through, but I'm tapping away. I'm friggin' tapping.
The noise gate or whatever, the noise gate or the noise canceller, noise reduction.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have the document up. Thank you for the tap dancing, Mike. Remember that we are on Patreon if you're interested in episodes like this. That's patreon.com/HTML, all the things. So check out the tiers and give that a go. Many thanks to our $3 tier patrons: Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se, Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacy Mosteler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. And remember that we also have that up to 20% off your Scrimba subscription. If you want to learn on their interactive media player code editor, please go and check that out using our affiliate link, scrimba.com/links/HTML All the Things. The link will be in the show description and in the show notes, and full details on the promotion will be in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. And we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, a contributing author on htmlallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media. On Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.